다? 나 도마라. 음, 아주 여기서 참 부가름지 총세 이름 붙이다.
I would like to wish the Chungse Rinpoche, the Chungse Boka Rinpoche, and Kempo Lododon Rinpoche, as well as all of the Kempos, lamas, and spiritual friends from the monasteries and nunneries, all of the students, and especially the nuns from the nunneries, and all of my Dharma friends, male and female, who are listening over the webcast. I'd like to wish you all my welcome this morning. So today is the last day of our Arya Kshema spring teachings. So for the last month, we have been speaking about the autobiographical verses, good deeds, and the praise search therapy, and we've had this wonderful opportunity. But I've not been able to teach the entire good deeds or search thoroughly as I'd originally planned. But I've had the opportunity to go into a certain degree of depth on the passages I have spoken about, so I'm very pleased about that. And so I am ready to teach the rest of these texts next year, and I also would like to do so. But of course, we cannot say definitely what time it will be next year, what the dates will be next year, but it'll probably be like this year after the Tibetan New Year. Now, the main purpose for teaching the liberation story of Mikyö Dorje this year for many years, I've hoped that all the listeners, and in particular all the lay and monastic followers of the Karma Kamsang and the monks and nuns Shedra students, all will have a greater understanding, familiarity of Mikyö Dorje's examples and deeds of body, speech, and mind, rather than just an oral understanding of that. And so I've hoped that they will be able to by teaching these liberations of the body, speech, and mind, I think they'll have a better understanding and greater familiarity with this. And so this is what I've hoped for the teachings, and that this has been my aims as well. Whether we are speaking about a guru's liberation story, an ordinary person's biography, whichever it is, this shouldn't be just for the sake of learning about a particular individual's situation and way of thinking. Instead, we should try to have a mental image of the whole world at that time and understand what that person's situation was like, because I think it's important for us to try to develop this. But for someone like myself, I haven't really specifically studied history, and the bit of history I know is just a little bit of bits and pieces from here and there. It's not a complete understanding. But over many years, I've read many different writings by Lord Mikyö Dorje. This has been a great fortune, and because of that, I feel for myself that I feel close to the world in which Mikyö Dorje traveled. So I think that when I've taught this liberation story, I think that many of the events I've described have been like news to all of you, new situations. For me personally, I feel that teaching the liberation stories this year has helped me develop even greater faith than I had before through knowing the reasons. Faith in the Gyalwang Karmapas, and the 8th Karmapa in particular. Particularly when we look at the situations that happened and events that happened during Mikyö Dorje's lifetime, there's a lot to see there. And so I have a particular feeling that comes from that. To give an example of this, when the 8th Karmapa was first recognized, there's the East and the Welcome Tulkus, and there's that big dispute over the Tulkus. There were many amazing signs that accompanied his birth and so forth, but still, there were people who doubted whether he was actually the Karmapa. And because of his karma, in the end, Mikyö Dorje had to stay in the community that included the most people who had doubted him, which was the Great Encampment, with the title of Karmapa. And at that time, most of the people in the Gyalwang Encampment had been supporters of the Western Tulku. And so Mikyö Dorje, they really had great doubts that Mikyö Dorje was actually the Karmapa. And in the end, he had to stay in that community of the most doubters. And even when they finally enthroned him, it was like a last resort for the leaders of the encampment. I really wondered, did they actually want to enthrone him? So at that time, because the Kampas who were in the same region from Mikyö Dorje said that he's the actual Karmapa, and so if you don't do it, we're going to attack you, they said. And they were so afraid that they enthroned him, as it is said, right? Even after he was enthroned, though, his greatest supporter in the encampment was Gyaltsab Rinpoche, but Gyaltsab Rinpoche suddenly passed away in a way that we suspect was murder by poisoning. And there were many authentic Karma Kamsang gurus, such as Sanyin Yempa Rinpoche, but all they could do was offer the Karmapa teachers. And there wasn't anyone who was actually able to change the situation within the encampment. So if we look at it from one perspective, from the time he was young, Mikyö Dorje had to live under other people's suspicions and disparagement and threats and criticism. And since he had to stay in that situation, if he were an ordinary individual, he would have become meek and weak-hearted, or someone who always only did whatever people told him to do. So it's a danger that would have happened to him. Or even in the worst situation, there was a danger he would have developed psychological problems, that we talk about today, anxiety disorders. What's the other name? I don't remember that is. There's a danger he would have had psychological difficulties. But even though he was in that situation, in that environment, his ability to stand for himself was as firm as a mountain. His resolve was like unstoppable, like the flow of a river. Not only that, he also was able to tear down the iron walls of bias and cast off unnecessary material things and hoist the banner of teachings and practice, leaving a treasure of teaching and writing. And so the legacy he left is the largest and broadest legacy that left by any of the Gyalwang Karmapas, and the traces of his deeds are unerasable. If you think of it like someone for myself, when I was young, I had no idea what was going on, but I was recognized as being the incarnation of the Karmapa. And then I fell right into the middle of a huge controversy about who was the Karmapa's reincarnation. And put in a very difficult political situation, encountered many never-ending difficulties. So I think if you wonder what I've learned from teaching this liberation story of Mikyö Dorje, and what particular feeling and what particular things I've learned from looking at this in detail, well, for me, what the liberation story of Mikyö Dorje teaches is that regardless of whatever someone says or what I think about whether I am in or not the Karmapa, if I have a lot of thoughts and if I have a lot of hopes and fears in my mind, then I should not become a slave to those hopes and fears. Instead, I don't need to use up my entire life worrying about an empty title. And instead, I need to do what I can to arouse some pure motivations from my very heart. Even if all I can do is shoulder even a small portion of the burden of Buddhism and sentient beings, I think that I will not be mistaken in the path that I travel. And I think that Mikyö Dorje's life story gives evidence of that. So I feel that the liberation stories of the masters of the past, and in particular the life story of Mikyö Dorje, really show me a path forward in this life, a way in this lifetime. And so I think that's what it shows me. And so the teaching, this liberation story, is not just teaching it to you, but also looking inside myself and developing some experience or some understanding. And so I think that is what has happened with me. So for this reason, I feel that I'm extremely fortunate from the bottom of my heart. I think this. So next I would like to speak about the remaining points in this discussion of the Karma Gardri style that we spoke about yesterday. Now, when the Karma Gardri style was founded, there were two famous artists. One was Namkha Tashi and one was Yartal Tulku Pende. So these days it's said that the Tulku Pende from Epo was an art teacher of Namkha Tashi. But it's not really well known whether he was a founder of the Gardri style. But when we look at the Light of the Great Sun by Rinchen Drupcho, which I quoted yesterday, on the liberation stories of the Karmapas and their hot suns and other related histories, then I think we can get a clearer picture that at the time that the Karma Gardri style was established, that Tulku Pende was an important personage in the establishment of the style. Likewise, from the Golden Garden of autobiographies by Sutta Pema mentioned, there is a story about the latter Sutta Chugye Jason. There were two, and since the latter Chugye Jason. And so what this says is that Sutta Chugye Jason had a temple built at Homage that had 150 columns, and it was a very large shrine room. And the foyer with 8 columns. And the murals in this temple were painted by Tulku Pende and Sebum Tende and others. And these depicted the 100 deeds, and they're based on descriptions by the Lord Chukyi Wangchuk. And somebody see the not all. Now, many of the murals at the Karmegun Monastery, the Yarmeche Monastery, are not left, but there are some left from the Lama Lakang. And we think that these were painted by Tulku Pende. And so I'd like to show them to you. So these are the old murals in the main shrine at Karma Monastery. So in 1918, when Kadositu was traveling to central Tibet, he stopped at Karma Monastery. And what he said at that time was that the shrine at Karma Yambucha had 56 columns and murals of the Jataka tales. They were in the old Gardri style paintings. Now these stories are the Jataka tales, but these are the murals in the Guru shrine room. So I think that we can hope that these were probably drawn by Tulku Pende. Also, there's a liberation story of the ninth Karmapa of the sixth Gyaltsab Rinpoche Japa Dundrup. Now, what it says in there is that after the ninth Karmapa passed away, the person who designed or who made the reliquary stupa of the eighth Karmapa was Tulku Pende. And also, what it says in the ninth in the Golden Garland Kagyu biography is what it says during the time of the previous Karma. There's no master artist, so the skilled artist from the outer tradition was Tulku Pende. And so during that time, there was no master artist, so Tulku Pende just criticized the other one, saying there's no really good monastery. And said, in the you'll become a master that you don't need to worry about. And so that's the reason why the 10th Karmapa, Churin Dorje, became a very fine artist. Now, if we want to see a painting by the 9th Karmapa, a drawing of the paintings. See, these are the melodies of the Mahakala Puja. They have really nice little drawings, right? They're nice drawings, but if a skilled artist look at them, they're like a child's drawings. Of course, they're nice, but if an expert looked at them, they'd be like a child's drawings. And so he didn't really know how to draw, and so for that reason, Tulku Pende and so forth criticized him for this. What this shows to us is that Tulku Pende was very familiar with the 9th Karmapa Wangche Dorje. Because he was so familiar, he was able to criticize them. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able. He was able to do this. Otherwise, he would not have dared criticize the 9th Karmapa. And so this shows that he was an artist who was really very close to the 9th Karmapa Wangche Dorje. Also, if you look at the autobiography of Sita Penchen, it says there was a painting of the 8 close sons by Tulku Pende, and which he saw. And on the back there's a person who made the design. The sketch for it was so he had an attendant of his make a copy of that, and had some other artists color it in. And so we can see that, but we are not able to identify we are able to. Okay, so the original by Tulku Pende is one that we cannot see, but we do have the copy of this, so I'd like to show you that copy. So it's probably this. Of course, there are many different ones, but so this is so for these reasons I've mentioned, the Yata Tulku Pende, regardless of whether he originally painted in the Mandri style, later he established and held the Gardri style and became one of the primary Gardri style painters. I think it's unnecessary to mention this. But unless we can actually see, rather to determine what the differences or the distinctions between his paintings and Namkha Tashi's. I think unless we actually see an actual painting of his, it's difficult to say. But I think that we can say that his technical skills were probably equal to those of Namkha Tashi. So now I'd like to speak about Namkha Tashi. Namkha Tashi recognized him. Mikyö Dorje recognized Namkha Tashi as his own emanation. And so he recognized him as his own emanation. And for this reason, not only did he become highly skilled in artistic techniques, he also became one of the leaders in establishing the Gardri style, as we do not need to mention. In particular, he was treated very well and very kindly by the Karmapa and his sons, and he worked on many projects as an artist and as a supervisor. To give an example of this, if we look at the Golden Garland of Karma biographies, in the biography of the fifth Karmapa, fifth Shamar, which it says on the way to Tantang at Patmutse, there was a copy of a Mintang, of a Sitang, of an old Chinese painting. And at the base of that, so there is an amazing story of the deeds of the picture by the deeds of the Buddha by Mentamba. And so the ninth Karmapa told him to write that, and Namkha Tashi wrote that, and they placed that one by that painting by Namkha Tashi was put in the center, and then on either side there were the words of the 12 deeds of the Buddha and the qualities of removal and ripening of the Buddha that were written. They were written on the silk they were written in gold on silk and put on either side of the tanka. So the first person who had him start the Gardri style was Shamar Kunche Yenlak, and the Shamar Rinpoche also had him many paintings. So I think he must have been very close to the ninth to the fifth Shamar. Also, the biography of the ninth Karmapa by Gyaltsab Drapa Dunda wrote that in 1582 he went to the Tsurpo Chokhangong, which later would become the residence of Gyaltsab Nimbu Rinpoche, and became the residence of many of the Gyaltsab Rinpoches. And the person who wrote the murals in that shrine was Tulku Namkha Tashi. Also, what it says in that biography, it says that in 1583, when the fifth Shamapa passed away, the reliquary stupa was made out of silver, and the person who supervised the construction of the reliquary stupa was Namkha Tashi. So that is recorded in the history. Likewise, when the ninth Karmapa Mikyö Dorje was young and studying the philosophical texts, they gathered many of the young students, intelligent people. So the reason why he was called, so he was included in the, so he was called a kusho. Now this Tibetan word is mean koko. Now this is called this because he was someone who was in the so he was called that because in the entourage of Karmapa, it means near the Karmapa. And so then he founded a monastery called the Kusho Omen Ling Monastery. And this was founded in 1591. And when he founded this, then Namkha Tashi was was told to paint the tankas of the lineage master. So there are many different tankas. And at the time that he was told to do this, it took him 8 years to do all the paintings. And in 1599, he was able to make an offering of these lineage tankas of the unified lineage to the 9th Karmapa Mikyö Dorje. Now, Kusho Omin Ling is today. So where is that these days? Today, it's in the Shite city in the Rinpong district, in the Zhongsor. So there are the remains of the monastery there, and within the remains of that monastery, there are still some portions of the murals that can be seen to this day. So I think it is important for us to research these murals. And the reason for this is that at the time, this was monastery Yung Omin Ling was built during the time of the initial establishment of the Gardri style. So I think it's a way that if we want to know what the original characteristics of the Gardri style were like, we should look at that. So I'd like to show you a picture of the murals, of the remains of the murals from this monastery. Yun Take was this is the ruins that have. It used to be a very elaborate monastery. Later it just became like a farmhouse. Now the farmhouse has even been torn down, and all that is left are the walls. And there's no one who is really taking care of them. So the paintings are in danger of being destroyed and degrading. Likewise, there's a Lalung monastery in Lhojak. This Lalung monastery had murals of the 9th Karmapa surrounded by the Kagyu gurus. And so these, very clear, this is written by Namkha Tashi. I think they were in the Gardri style, so they could have been painted by either Namkha Tashi or Kunju Pende. Perhaps they were done by another artist at the time of the 9th Karmapa. But these, I think it is important for us to also research these murals as well. So I'd like to show you these murals from the Lalung monastery in Lhojak. And so these are the main murals with Mikyö Dorje in the middle. Now, recently, what has been recently discovered in recent times, are in Lhothat Nyige Monastery in Bhutan. And so this is where there's a branch of the Changpa Monastery there. And so that's the Lhothat Nyide Monastery. That was the seat of Shamar Kunchik Yanlak. And the place where this monastery, and so that is place of the Kashut. So there are some old tankas paintings of the Kagyu lineage, and Kata Sutta described in his description of the place. He said that there are 25 paintings of the Kagyu lineage masters in the old Gardri style written during the time of the Shama Rinpoche. And he describes the silk brocade frames and so forth around them. And so there are amazing drawings that just had there was none that could compare to them. And so these paintings I think we can determine that these were probably done during the time of the 5th Shamar Rinpoche Inlag. And there's a good hope, or a good chance, that the artist was Namkha Tashi, because, as I mentioned, the person who directed the establishment of this was Kunja Yenlak, and because he also had Namkha Tashi paint many paintings, and so this kind of painting these paintings are probably among the oldest remaining paintings of the Kama Gardri studies. So these are like a really important family, the ancestral jewel of the Karma Gardri style. And so these are something that we need to research, and we need to, I think we need to study and research these painters. And so I would like to now show you the murals from the Nide Monastery in Hlochak. So there are two of them here that I'd like to show you. Now the paintings are, it's like the coloration as described, because during the Cultural Revolution they were hidden in a cave, and so they got wet, and so for that reason they've degraded somewhat. And so that's a discussion of Tulku Pende and Lamka Tashi, an introduction to these two great masters who established the Karma Gardri style. Now look what it says in the Great Light of the Sun is that during the time of the 10th Karmapa studied art with Tulku Tsurning from Trikya and Lodrak in the tradition of Menlong, and he practiced that style in the first part of this. Later, he studied the Chinese styles and also the Kashmiri styles, and became a great artist who had no comparison in Tibet. Now, basically, what this is saying is that in Tibet, there was no one who was as skilled as him in poetry or art in Tibet. And that he said that he was someone who, was someone who had pleased Avalokiteshvara, and they had come to this world primarily to draw paintings. So he drew paintings, he also sculpted. And it said that every day he made a new painting or a new image every single day, without missing any. So these days, many foreign scholars who are studying the 10th Karmapa say that the 10th Karmapa, Mikyö Dorje, was one of the greatest of all Tibetan artists, and one of the most skilled of them. And there are many of his paintings that we could show. But today, just for an example of this, I'd like to show you this one of his paintings showing the Buddha taming the Maras or subduing the Maras. Actually, next year, I think I can speak about the 10th Karmapa Mikyö Dorje and his paintings, but I think that is enough for today. Then in 1664, Gyalwang Karmapa, whom I mentioned yesterday, was born. What he did, his primary did, is he wrote this text, the Great Light of the Sun, that is a commentary on the form. So this is one of the oldest texts on the Gardri style that we have. It's about the proportions of deities. Now, among these descriptions of the proportions, there is an earliest ones were by Drogten Pampa student Sunam Weza or Jamyan Drakpa of Tsao Rongpa. And there is also the flower mounted by Yenda Junior and Ripe Radhe. And there's also the mirror for viewing reflections by Tsongkhapa students Tashi Tsotrim, the wish-fulfilling jewel of proportions by Menla Dundrup, and then the proportions of the deities, the mirror that shows the sutras and tantras by Tsang Tana Rikad Tulkupadan Lodra, the proportions by Taranata, the ocean of wealth creating images of body, speech, and mind by Taksan Lotsawa, and then also the Desi Sanya Gyatso's text determining the proportions of deities. And also his great text on Dripat. Now this great painting said that there are actually two. There's one in U and one in Tsang, but these days we only have the one in U. The great painting in Tsang is probably missing. So this is a very old painting. This is probably the earliest, most elaborate of these such paintings. Later, there was many others. There was the designs of craftsmanship by Gyalwang Karmapa. So basically, when we look at so it's necessary for us to research all of these texts by these great masters of the path and to see how they flourished and understand their and see what their each individual features are. I think this is important for us to do. Now, there's an old tanka of the Gyaltsab Rinpoches done during the time of Gyaltsab Rinpoche. And I think this is probably done by Gyaltsab Rinchen Chodrok. And the reason why I think this is because he was a student of the 6th Gyaltsab Nobudundra. And so this is an old. There are several old tomatoes several old paintings of the Gyaltsab, but the primary one is this one by Gyaltsab Nobru Sampa of the Gyaltsab Nobru Sampa. And so this I will show you now, the 6th Gyaltsab Rinpoche Nobru Sampa. So this is the tanka of Gyaltsab Nobru Sampa. And I think this is probably written by Gyalwang Rinchen Sampa. In any case, these are among the oldest paintings in the Karma style. Now, in the 17th century, to the end, there was during the lifetime of the third Kamala Kununga Tenzin, there was an artist named Chutashi. And he was one of the three Tashis, three great artists of the Gardri school. So he was one of these three Tashis. And he, on the description and the direction of Kunga Tenzin, he wrote a lineage talk as a Drupal Tashi of the Drupal Kagyu lineage. So I'd like to show you the first of this, so the one of Vajradhara. And so this is by the artist Chutashi of Jetu, the first lineage tanka of Vajradhara from the Drupal Kagyu lineage series by Chutashi. And then in the 18th century, there was Siddhartha Panchen, who was very well versed in all fields of knowledge. And in terms of artist, he had studied very thoroughly in the painting and so forth. And so he restored the previous Gardri styles, and he helped propagate it. And so he had a very great influence on this. So I didn't have a lot of time to speak about this today, so I cannot say much about that today. So next year, I should probably begin to research this from now so that I can present this all to you next year. And so I think that is enough for me today. So next, I would like the organizers of the Arya Kshema Spring Teachings have a letter to read. So I'd like to ask you to please read that letter now. So now, we weren't able to hold the Arya Kshema Winter Dharma gathering, but as a substitute for it, they prepared to have these teachings on the autobiographical verses of Mikyö Dorje, and so this is organized by the nuns, and particularly those of the Palpam Yeshe Rabteng Ning. They have all taken the responsibility, and this teaching has now been completed very well in the beginning, middle, and end. And so I'd like to make an auspicious connection with all of you. So I'd like to think that I'm very grateful and feel very thankful to all of you. In particular, Labada. Now, as I mentioned before, this year's teachings, the original plan was to finish the entire text, but I didn't finish it. And if I had just insisted on finishing, if I had not done it in detail, it wouldn't have worked out. So in the particular, I don't have a particular lineage or that is, I don't have the longer reading transmission of either of these texts. If I could just give the transition, so I could give it as a transition. So for the time being, I think we just need to leave it here, and next year I will continue speaking about it. Likewise, in recent times, the feeling that I've had recently is that in the past times, we had the karma gachen, that it didn't stay in one place, it went from place to place. To make connections with many people in various different related remote places. This is a method that was started by the previous Karmapas, and in these days, because of the technological advances in the world, it's not necessary to actually go to those places. We can go over the webcast and make connections with everyone all over the world. So for taking these times, the Garchen, the Great Encampment, is the website, or the Internet encampment. And so the Internet encampment doesn't need horses and pack animals and tents like we did before. These days, if you have a computer and a webcam, it's fine. So I think this is a really great opportunity. So from this year onward, I thought I shouldn't hide whatever my experiences and what I've understood. I shouldn't conceal them, but I should say teach as much as I can to you. And so, as I said the other day, I have the hope that we have a summer teaching. Now, we haven't been able to establish the dates, but once we have established the dates, then I will make an announcement to all of you. Likewise, in Chinese, I've thought that I should teach over the internet in Chinese, but I haven't been able to establish the dates. But the topic will probably be about the topic of mind training, or perhaps about the Vajra Splitter Sutra. But we haven't decided this in particular. In any case, normally, when I'm in India, I'm not able to go abroad, and the people from so there's no choice for the people from abroad but to come and see me. Likewise, when I was in India, the internet was not as good as it is now. But now the internet has really improved, and for that reason, if I can teach you whatever I can over the internet, there's no reason for you to come and see me and to spend all of the money, and you can listen to the Dharma while staying comfortably in your own homes, and that's good, isn't that? And so I think this is also a profit for you. It's also beneficial for you. So I think for this reason, My hope is that I can teach more Dharma this year. Now I don't have much else to say. I'm a little bit tired myself. Yes, I can't think of anything to say. My mind has just gone empty, and I don't have anything to say, so I think it's better to just leave it here. We will have a 20-minute break, and then we will get together, and we will all come together again. We will recite the rain of wisdom, the ocean of Kagyu songs.